the unexpected summons. Marcus Chin had spent the last 8 months talking to machines that never talked back. The Deep Space Relay Station orbiting beyond Neptune's influence was supposed to be humanity's grand achievement in interstellar communication, a beacon announcing Earth's presence to the cosmos. Instead, it had become Marcus's personal prison of silence, where his only companions were diagnostic readouts and the occasional burst of static from distant pulsars. He had volunteered for this assignment with enthusiasm, imagining himself as a pioneer on humanity's frontier. Reality proved less romantic. Most days involved recalibrating satellite dishes, running system checks, and microwaving meals that all somehow tasted like cardboard despite their colorful packaging. The station's AI assistant had developed a glitch that made it respond to every command with a 3-second delay, just long enough to make Marcus question whether he had actually spoken aloud or merely thought about it. On the morning everything changed, Marcus was performing his weekly inspection of the communication array, floating in his maintenance suit outside the station's hull. Earth appeared as a pale blue dot in the distance, barely distinguishable from the surrounding stars. He had just finished tightening a loose connection when his helmet display flashed with an incoming priority alert. The AI's voice crackled through his headset after its characteristic pause. Unidentified vessel approaching. Classification unknown. Recommend immediate return to station. Marcus pulled himself along the safety tether, his heart rate climbing. In 8 months, the only vessels that had come near were scheduled supply drones from Earth. An unidentified approach meant either a catastrophic navigation error or something far more interesting. He cycled through the airlock and immediately pulled up the station's external sensors. The vessel materialized on his screens like something out of humanity's wildest speculations. It was enormous, easily dwarfing the relay station by a factor of 10. Its hull shimmered with a metallic iridescence that seemed to shift colors as it moved, like oil on water catching sunlight. The design was organic and geometric simultaneously, with sweeping curves that somehow maintained perfect symmetry. No human engineer had designed this ship. Marcus stood frozen, watching as the vessel adjusted its trajectory with impossible precision. It moved without visible propulsion, gliding through space as if the laws of physics were merely suggestions it chose to follow. His hands trembled slightly as he activated the station's recording systems. Whatever happened next needed to be documented. The communication board erupted with activity. Signals poured in across multiple frequencies, complex patterns that the station's AI struggled to decode. Marcus watched the translation algorithms work, finding patterns in the alien transmission. After several tense minutes, text began appearing on his screen. Request immediate assistance. Communication systems failure. Diplomatic emergency. Permission to dock. Marcus read the message 3 times. First contact protocols existed in theory, buried somewhere in the station's database under procedures he had never expected to use. Those protocols certainly did not cover alien vessels requesting technical assistance. He was a communications engineer, not a diplomat or a military officer. Yet here he was, the only human for billions of kilometers, faced with a decision that could reshape humanity's future. His fingers moved across the keyboard almost automatically. Permission granted. Docking port 3 is available. The alien vessel responded with a pulse of light that Marcus interpreted as acknowledgement. It maneuvered toward the station with graceful efficiency, extending a docking tube that seamlessly interfaced with the human-made port despite obvious design differences. Whoever built this ship had either studied human technology or possessed engineering principles that transcended cultural boundaries. Marcus rushed to pressurize the docking corridor and activate the atmospheric analyzers. If the visitors required a hostile environment, this encounter would end before it began. The readings stabilized, showing an atmosphere remarkably similar to Earth's, slightly higher in oxygen content but well within tolerable ranges. He barely had time to straighten his uniform before the airlock door slid open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. The figure that emerged made Marcus forget how to breathe. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, her form humanoid but refined in ways that suggested evolutionary paths humanity had never taken. Her skin held a faint luminescence, like moonlight trapped beneath pearl. Her features were sharp and elegant, with high cheekbones and eyes that shifted between violet and silver depending on the angle of light. But most striking were the elaborate patterns that traced across her exposed skin, glowing circuitry that pulsed with a soft rhythm matching what Marcus assumed was her heartbeat. She wore armor that seemed grown rather than forged, conforming to her body while maintaining an unmistakable air of authority. Behind her, 4 guards emerged, each nearly as tall and equipped with weapons Marcus hoped remained decorative. They moved with military precision, scanning the corridor before allowing their leader to proceed. The tall figure stepped forward, and when she spoke, her voice carried a melodic quality that made Marcus think of wind chimes and thunder simultaneously. The words emerged in perfect English, though her lips moved slightly out of sync with the sounds. "I am Queen Seraphine of the Kithari Empire, sovereign of the 12 systems and guardian of the ancient routes. You are the station's communications specialist." Marcus found his voice after an embarrassingly long pause. "Yes, Your Majesty. I'm Marcus Chin, senior engineer. I'm the only permanent personnel stationed here." Seraphine's eyes narrowed slightly, a gesture Marcus interpreted as concern. "One human maintains this entire facility?" "Budget constraints," Marcus said, then immediately regretted his casual tone. "I mean, yes. The station is largely automated. I handle maintenance and unexpected situations." "Then this qualifies as unexpected," Seraphine said, and Marcus detected something that might have been amusement in her tone. "My vessel's long-range communication array has suffered a critical failure. My technicians cannot identify the cause. We intercepted signals from this station and determined human engineering might offer a different perspective." Marcus tried to process this. An interstellar empire with technology centuries beyond Earth's was asking for his help with a communications problem. It felt like a medieval blacksmith being consulted by a modern aerospace engineer about a faulty spacecraft component. "I'll do whatever I can," Marcus said. "But I should warn you, my experiences with human technology. I don't know if my knowledge will translate to your systems." "Understanding often bridges the gaps between different approaches," Seraphine replied. "Will you accompany me to my vessel?" The invitation carried the weight of command despite its polite phrasing. Marcus glanced at his monitoring station, knowing the AI could maintain basic functions in his absence. Besides, refusing a request from an alien queen seemed like poor diplomatic practice. "Of course," he said. "Let me grab my diagnostic kit." Minutes later, Marcus found himself walking through corridors that redefined his understanding of engineering aesthetics. The Kithari ship's interior resembled a living organism more than a mechanical construct. Walls curved seamlessly into floors and ceilings, all covered in the same luminescent patterns he had seen on Seraphine's skin. The lighting came from the structure itself, pulsing gently as if the ship breathed. Guards flanked them at a respectful distance as Seraphine led Marcus deeper into the vessel. He noticed crew members stopping to observe their passage, their expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion. Marcus tried to appear confident despite feeling utterly out of his depth. They entered a turbolift that accelerated without any sensation of movement, Marcus's stomach only informing him of the change in velocity after they had already stopped. The doors opened onto a corridor more opulent than the others, with what appeared to be living crystal formations growing along the walls. "This is the command section," Seraphine explained. "My personal quarters and primary control systems are located here." She approached a door that responded to her presence. Iris NG opened to reveal a chamber that took Marcus's breath away. The room was circular, with walls that displayed what appeared to be real-time feeds from outside the ship. Stars wheeled slowly across the displays, giving the impression of standing in open space. In the center of the room stood a structure that Marcus immediately recognized as communication equipment, though its design was unlike anything in human databases. The device consisted of dozens of crystalline rods arranged in a spherical pattern, each one connected to the others by threads of light that pulsed arrhythmically. The entire assembly floated above a pedestal without visible support, rotating slowly as if caught in an invisible current. "This is our long-range transceiver," Seraphine said. "It allows communication across vast distances by creating quantum-entangled channels. 3 days ago it ceased functioning properly. Messages arrive corrupted or not at all. My technicians have conducted extensive diagnostics without success." Marcus approached the device carefully, his engineer's instincts overriding his nervousness. He pulled out his diagnostic scanner, a crude tool compared to the technology before him, but it was what he had. The readings made little sense initially, the scanner struggling to interpret energy signatures it had never been designed to detect. Then Marcus noticed something odd. The crystalline rods were pulsing out of sync but not randomly. There was a pattern to their discord, a rhythm that suggested interference rather than malfunction. He walked slowly around the device, watching how the light threads connected each rod to its neighbors. "May I ask a question?" Marcus said, not taking his eyes off the transceiver. "Proceed," Seraphine replied. Has anyone accessed this chamber in the past 3 days besides your technicians? Seraphine's expression shifted, a micro-expression Marcus couldn't quite interpret. This is a secured area. Only those with proper authorization may enter. That's not what I asked, Marcus said gently. I'm not questioning your security. I'm trying to understand if someone might have deliberately interfered with this device. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Seraphine's guards tensed, their hands moving closer to their weapons. The queen herself remained still, but Marcus saw the patterns on her skin flare brighter for a moment. Explain your reasoning, she said quietly. Marcus gestured to the crystalline array. I'm no expert in your technology, but I understand signal processing. This isn't behaving like a broken system. It's behaving like a system with a specifically introduced error. See how these rods are oscillating? They're being disrupted by a harmonic frequency that's almost perfectly calibrated to cause maximum interference while remaining subtle enough to avoid obvious detection. He moved to the pedestal, examining its base. His scanner detected a small device, barely larger than a grain of rice, attached to the underside where it would be invisible without direct inspection. There, Marcus said, pointing. That's your problem. Someone planted an interference generator. Seraphine moved with sudden speed that startled Marcus. She knelt beside the pedestal, her eyes narrowing as she examined the device. When she stood, her expression had hardened into something dangerous. Leave us, she commanded her guards. Your Majesty, protocol requires, one guard began. I said leave. Her voice carried absolute authority. Seal the corridor and ensure we are not disturbed. The guards exchanged uncertain glances but obeyed, filing out of the chamber. As the last one exited, Seraphine raised one hand. The patterns on her skin flared brilliantly, and Marcus heard multiple heavy locks engaging throughout the door. The sound echoed through the chamber with disturbing finality. Marcus's mouth went dry. He was now locked in a room with an alien queen who had just discovered sabotage on her ship, and he was the one who had revealed it. Various scenarios flashed through his mind, none of them particularly comforting. Seraphine turned to face him fully, her violet-silver eyes intense. She took a step closer, then another, until she stood within arm's reach. Marcus forced himself not to retreat, maintaining eye contact despite every instinct screaming at him to run. Come here, human, Seraphine said softly, and despite the gentle tone, it was unmistakably a command. Marcus swallowed hard. Your Majesty, if I've offended? You have not offended, she interrupted. You have done something far more significant. You have proven yourself trustworthy in a moment when I desperately need someone I can trust. She gestured to seating that emerged from the floor, conforming to shapes suitable for both their physiologies. Marcus sat cautiously, his mind racing through implications. What I am about to tell you, Seraphine continued, settling into her own seat with fluid grace, is known to fewer than a dozen individuals in the entire Kithari Empire. The communication failure was not unexpected. It was, in fact, predicted. Predicted. Marcus echoed. There is a faction within my government that believes humanity represents a threat to the Empire. When we detected your species' first interstellar communication attempts 8 months ago, it sparked significant debate. Some of my advisors counsel isolation. Others suggest preemptive action. Marcus felt ice forming in his stomach. Preemptive action? I have prevented such measures, Seraphine said quickly. I believe humanity has potential as allies rather than enemies. But my political opponents worked to undermine my position. They sabotaged my communication array knowing I was coming to meet you, hoping to prevent any alliance from forming. Then why come at all? Marcus asked. If it's that dangerous for you politically. Because of what we found, Seraphine interrupted, leaning forward with sudden intensity. 3 months ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected something approaching our galaxy. Something old and vast and hostile. We have records of it from our species' ancient history before we achieved spaceflight. Our ancestors called it the Silence, because it extinguished entire civilizations without warning. Marcus felt the weight of her words settle over him like a physical force. How long do we have? Our projections suggest 6 weeks before it reaches the outer territories. Perhaps 3 months before it threatens inhabited systems. She paused, her patterns pulsing with agitated light. We need every ally we can gather. But more than that, we need access to technology our ancestors left behind, technology specifically designed to combat this threat. And this technology? Marcus prompted. Responds only to certain neural patterns, Seraphine finished. Patterns we no longer possess after millennia of evolution. But when we analyzed human brain activity from your station's medical database, we found something extraordinary. Your neural architecture resembles the ancient Kithri more closely than our own modern patterns. Marcus processed this revelation slowly. You're saying humans might be able to use this ancient technology when your own people cannot? Not just use it, Seraphine said. Understand it, repair it, perhaps even improve it. This is why I needed to meet you personally, away from those who would see humanity destroyed rather than elevated to partnership. She stood, moving to the wall where a hidden panel slid open at her touch. Inside, Marcus saw a crystalline data storage device pulsing with inner light. This contains coordinates to the facility where the ancient technology is housed, Seraphine said. It also contains the evidence of the sabotage plot against me, including names of those involved. I am trusting you with information that could spark a civil war in my empire if mishandled. Marcus stood as well, his engineering mind already wrestling with the implications. Why me? Why not go through proper diplomatic channels with Earth? Because we do not have time for committees and negotiations, Seraphine replied with fierce urgency. Because my enemies monitor official channels. And because sometimes the fate of civilizations rests on moments of individual courage rather than collective deliberation. She extended the data device toward him. I am asking you, Marcus Chin of Earth, to help me save both our peoples. Will you accept this responsibility? Marcus looked at the crystalline device, then at the alien queen whose entire posture radiated desperate hope. He thought about his small relay station, his simple life of maintenance routines and microwaved meals. He thought about Earth, unaware of the approaching danger. He thought about all the reasons he should refuse, should insist on proper protocols and chain of command. Then he reached out and took the device from her hand. Tell me what you need me to do, he said. The relief that flooded Seraphine's expression was unmistakable, transcending the barriers of species and culture. First, we remove the sabotage device and restore communications. Then we must convince my crew that you are here as my invited guest and technical consultant. Finally, we travel to the ancient facility and see if human ingenuity can unlock what Kithri science cannot. And if I fail? Marcus asked. Then we face the silence with whatever resources we have, Seraphine replied. But I do not believe you will fail, Marcus Chin. Your species did not reach the stars by accepting defeat. She moved to the door, preparing to unlock it and face whatever political consequences awaited. But she paused, looking back at Marcus with an expression that seemed almost vulnerable despite her regal bearing. Thank you, she said simply, for trusting me when you had every reason not to. Marcus managed a slightly shaky smile. You locked me in a room and told me an ancient evil is coming to destroy the galaxy. Honestly, refusing seemed rude. This time, Seraphine's amusement was unmistakable, a soft sound that might have been the Kithri equivalent of laughter. Perhaps there is hope for our people's friendship after all, if we can find humor in apocalyptic circumstances. The locks disengaged with a series of heavy clicks. Beyond the door, Marcus knew, waited a ship full of aliens who might view him as anything from curiosity to threat. Beyond that waited ancient secrets and approaching doom. But standing beside an alien queen who had chosen to trust him with the fate of civilizations, Marcus Chin felt something he had not experienced in 8 months of isolation. He felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. The door opened, and together they stepped forward to face whatever came next. The ancient protocol. The corridor outside Seraphine's chamber buzzed with tension thick enough to cut with a blade. Her guards stood at rigid attention, their weapons now prominently displayed rather than concealed. Behind them, Marcus could see dozens of Kithri crew members gathered at what they probably considered a respectful distance, though their body language radiated curiosity mixed with unmistakable hostility. He suddenly understood what it felt like to be a specimen under a microscope. Seraphine stepped through the doorway with absolute confidence, her luminescent patterns blazing brightly in what Marcus was beginning to recognize as a dominance display. The gathered crowd immediately fell silent, many averting their eyes from direct contact with their queen. Marcus followed closely, trying to project confidence he absolutely did not feel. The communication array has been compromised by sabotage, Seraphine announced, her voice carrying effortlessly down the corridor. The human engineer identified the interference device within minutes of examination. He is now under my personal protection as a technical consultant to the Crown. A ripple of reaction moved through the assembled Kithri. Marcus caught fragments of their expressions: surprise, anger, skepticism, and in some cases, what looked disturbingly like calculation. Not everyone here was happy about his presence, and some looked like they were already planning ways to remedy that situation. One figure pushed through the crowd, a Kithari male whose patterns pulsed with aggressive red undertones. He was slightly shorter than Seraphine but broader, his armor more heavily decorated with rank insignia that Marcus couldn't interpret but suspected indicated high status. "Your Majesty," the male said with a bow that somehow conveyed respect and challenge simultaneously. "Surely you cannot be serious about bringing this primitive creature deeper into our vessel. We know nothing of its true capabilities or loyalties." "Commander Vaxer," Seraphine replied coolly, "I was unaware that my decisions required your approval. Have the command structures changed during my brief absence?" Vaxer's patterns flared brighter red. "Of course not, Your Majesty. I merely express concern for your safety. This human could be an agent of any number of hostile powers. Bringing it into secured areas seems unwise." Marcus noticed Seraphine's jaw tighten at Vaxer's repeated use of "it" to refer to him. She stepped forward, and despite Vaxer's larger build, he seemed to shrink slightly under her gaze. "Engineer Chin is a he, not an it," Seraphine said quietly, each word precisely enunciated. "And he has already proven more useful than my entire technical staff combined. The sabotage device he discovered was placed within the last 72 hours by someone with authorized access to my chambers. I find that considerably more concerning than the presence of an invited guest." The implications of her words struck the gathered crowd like a physical blow. Conversations erupted in hushed tones as Kithari exchanged shocked glances. Vaxer's patterns shifted from red to something darker, almost purple. "Sabotage?" Vaxer repeated. "Your Majesty, that's a serious accusation. Perhaps the human misinterpreted what he saw. These creatures have limited understanding of." "The device has been removed and is currently undergoing analysis," Seraphine interrupted. "I expect a full report on its origin and the identity of who placed it within 6 hours. Is that clear, Commander?" Vaxer's expression suggested he had bitten into something extremely sour, but he bowed stiffly. "Perfectly clear, Your Majesty." Seraphine dismissed the crowd with a gesture, and they dispersed with obvious reluctance. Marcus caught several Kithari glancing back at him with expressions he couldn't quite interpret but definitely didn't like. He was suddenly very aware of how alone he was on this ship, billions of kilometers from any other human. "That went well," Marcus muttered as Seraphine led him down a different corridor, her personal guards forming a protective perimeter around them. "Commander Vaxer leads the isolationist faction," Seraphine explained quietly. "He believes the Kithari Empire should withdraw from all external contact and focus solely on defending our core systems. He views humanity as a potential threat that should be neutralized before you develop more advanced technology." "Neutralized?" Marcus repeated flatly. "That's a nice way of saying exterminated." "I will not allow that to happen," Seraphine said with fierce certainty. "But I need you to understand the danger we face from within my own ranks. There are those who would kill you simply to prevent the alliance I'm proposing." They descended deeper into the ship through a series of passages that seemed to phase between solid and translucent states as they passed. Marcus's engineering mind catalogued every detail even as his survival instinct screamed warnings. They were heading to a section of the vessel that felt older somehow, the architecture subtly different from the upper decks. "We're approaching the archaeological vault," Seraphine said. "This section was added to my flagship specifically to transport the artifacts we discovered. Very few crew members have clearance to enter." They stopped before a massive door that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of stone, though Marcus's scanner detected energy signatures suggesting it was far more sophisticated than mere rock. Seraphine placed her hand against the surface, and her patterns synchronized with glowing symbols that appeared on the door. Marcus heard mechanisms engaging deep within the structure, complex locks opening in sequence. The door swung inward with surprising silence, revealing a chamber that made Marcus's breath catch in his throat. It was enormous, easily the size of a small hangar, but its most striking feature was the lighting. Or rather, the lack of conventional lighting. Instead, the entire room was illuminated by the artifact itself. It floated in the center of the chamber, suspended within a containment field that shimmered like heat waves over desert sand. The structure was impossible to describe adequately. It seemed to shift as Marcus looked at it, his brain struggling to process geometry that didn't quite follow normal spatial rules. At one moment it appeared crystalline and angular. The next it looked organic, almost biological. Colors flowed across its surface in patterns that hurt to watch for too long. "What is it?" Marcus whispered, unable to look away. "We don't entirely know," Seraphine admitted, moving closer to the containment field. "Our best analysis suggests it's a defensive system of some kind, designed to create a protective barrier on a massive scale. But it's also partially alive, or at least biomechanical in nature. The technology that created this predates our empire by thousands of years. Marcus approached carefully, his diagnostic scanner working overtime to collect data. The readings were bizarre. The artifact was generating energy signatures across spectrums he hadn't known existed. It pulsed with a rhythm that reminded him uncomfortably of a heartbeat, though the pattern was more complex than any biological organism he knew. Your scientists can't activate it? Marcus asked. They can't even fully scan it, Seraphine replied. Every attempt to interface with the artifact fails. It's as if the technology refuses to recognize us as valid operators. But 3 weeks ago something changed. She manipulated controls on a nearby console, and holographic displays materialized around the chamber. Marcus saw waveforms and energy patterns, most of which meant nothing to him. But then Seraphine highlighted a specific section of data. These are neural activity scans, she explained. On the left, you see the pattern of a Kithri scientist attempting to interface with the artifact. No response. On the right, we have the recorded neural activity from a human subject. Data we obtained from your station's medical monitoring systems. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine at the invasion of privacy, but he focused on the displays. The difference was striking. The Kithri patterns showed sharp, angular spikes with very regular intervals. The human patterns were messier, more chaotic, with overlapping frequencies that created complex interference patterns. The artifact responds to complexity and chaos, Marcus said slowly, understanding dawning. Your neural patterns are too organized, too efficient. Whatever species created this technology had brains more like ours, less optimized but more adaptable. Precisely, Seraphine confirmed. Our evolution has made us highly efficient thinkers, but we've lost something in the process. The flexibility, the creative chaos that defined our ancestors. Humanity still possesses that quality. Marcus moved closer to the containment field, studying the artifact with new appreciation. So you need me to try interfacing with it? To see if my messy human brain can unlock what your efficient Kithri minds cannot? Yes, Seraphine said. But I must warn you, we don't know what will happen when you make contact. Previous attempts with other species have resulted in adverse reactions. How adverse are we talking? Marcus asked, though he suspected he didn't want to know the answer. Fatal in 3 cases, permanent psychological damage in 2 others, Seraphine replied quietly. I will not order you to attempt this. It must be your choice. Marcus stood silent, staring at the impossible artifact before him. Every rational part of his mind screamed that this was insanity. He was a communications engineer, not a xenoarchaeologist or a neuroscientist. He had no training for this, no preparation. The smart choice was to refuse, to insist they find another way. But he thought about Seraphine's words earlier. The silence, approaching from the depths of space. Civilizations extinguished without warning. Earth, unaware and unprepared. His entire species depending on decisions made by people who had no idea what was coming. If I die doing this, Marcus said slowly, make sure someone tells Earth what's coming. Give them a chance to prepare. Seraphine moved to stand beside him, her expression solemn. You have my word. But I believe you will survive this, Marcus Chin. There is something about you, a resilience I have seen in few beings. You volunteered for 8 months of isolation in deep space. That takes a particular kind of strength. Or a particular kind of stupidity, Marcus replied with a weak smile. Perhaps they are the same quality viewed from different angles, Seraphine suggested. She moved to the containment field controls. When you're ready, I'll lower the barrier. Approach the artifact slowly. Don't try to force contact. Let it come to you. Marcus took several deep breaths, trying to calm his racing heart. He thought about his training, about all the complex systems he had learned to understand through patient observation. This was just another system, he told himself. Just another problem to solve. The fact that it might kill him was simply an additional variable to consider. Okay, he said. I'm ready. Seraphine manipulated the controls, and the containment field dissolved with a sound like wind chimes. Immediately, Marcus felt a change in the atmosphere. The air seemed thicker, charged with static electricity that made his hair stand on end. The artifact pulsed brighter, and for a moment Marcus could have sworn he heard something. Not a sound exactly, but a vibration that resonated in his bones. He took a step forward. The artifact's colors shifted, flowing faster across its impossible surface. Another step. The vibration grew stronger, and Marcus realized it was trying to communicate, attempting to establish some kind of connection. His scanner was going haywire, displaying readings that made no sense according to any known physics. "Marcus," Seraphine called softly, "your biosigns are spiking. If you need to stop." "No," Marcus said, surprised by the steadiness in his own voice. "It's not hurting me. It's curious." He reached out slowly, extending his hand toward the artifact. The moment his fingers came within a foot of its surface, everything changed. Images flooded his mind with overwhelming intensity. He saw vast cities of crystal and light, towers reaching toward purple skies. He saw beings that resembled both Kithari and humans but were neither, moving through their world with purposeful grace. He saw them looking upward in horror as something approached from the void between stars. The silence. It appeared in his vision as an absence more than a presence, a darkness that consumed light and matter and thought itself. He watched entire planets go dark as it passed, their civilizations erased as if they had never existed. He felt the terror of those ancient builders as they worked desperately to create defenses, to forge weapons that might stop what seemed unstoppable. The artifact was one such weapon. No, not a weapon. A shield. A barrier designed to protect not just against physical attack but against something more fundamental. The silence didn't just destroy matter. It erased existence itself, undoing the quantum foundations that held reality together. Marcus saw the artifact's creators encoding their knowledge, their hopes, their desperate final efforts into this device. They knew they wouldn't survive to use it. But perhaps others might in some distant future when the silence returned. Because it always returned. It was a force of entropy itself, the universe's immune system attacking complexity wherever it arose. The vision shifted and Marcus saw the present. The silence was closer than Seraphine realized. Not weeks away but days. It had learned patience over eons, had developed ways to mask its approach until too late. It was already destroying outlying systems, testing defenses, learning about the civilizations that had arisen since its last passage. And then Marcus saw something that made his blood run cold. The silence was aware of him. Right now, in this moment, it perceived his touch upon the ancient technology. It recognized the threat he represented, the possibility that the old defenses might activate again. It was changing course. Accelerating. Coming for this ship. Marcus snapped back to awareness, gasping as if he had been drowning. He staggered backward and Seraphine caught him, her strength surprising as she steadied him. The artifact pulsed once more, brighter than before, and then settled into a new rhythm. The containment field automatically re-engaged, but Marcus could see the device had changed. Symbols now glowed along its surface, alien script that nevertheless seemed somehow readable to him. "Marcus," Seraphine said urgently. "What happened? You were in contact for less than a minute, but your biosigns indicated extreme neural activity." "It showed me," Marcus said, his voice hoarse. "Everything. What it is, what the silence is, why it's coming. Seraphine, we have less time than you thought. Days, not weeks. And it knows we're here." The chamber's lights flickered as if in response to his words. Throughout the ship, Marcus heard alarms beginning to sound. Seraphine's expression shifted from concern to grim determination as she accessed her command implants. "Long-range sensors are detecting gravitational anomalies," she reported. "Multiple vectors approaching at speeds that should be impossible. The bridge is calling battle stations." "It's not a battle you can win with weapons," Marcus said, struggling to organize the flood of information still coursing through his mind. "The silence doesn't exist in normal space. You can't shoot it or outrun it. You can only hide behind shields it can't penetrate." "Then we need to activate the artifact," Seraphine said. "Can you do it?" Marcus looked at the device, now pulsing with symbols he somehow understood despite their alien origin. The knowledge was there in his head, placed by the ancient builders who had anticipated this moment. They had designed their creation to recognize minds capable of the flexible thinking needed to operate it, minds that could adapt and improvise rather than follow rigid patterns. "Yes," Marcus said. "But not here. The artifact is only a key, not the actual defense system. The shield itself is somewhere else." "Where?" Seraphine demanded. Marcus closed his eyes, accessing the memories that weren't his own. He saw coordinates, spatial references, a location marked in the ancient builder's navigation system. His mind automatically translated them into terms he could understand, mapping them against his knowledge of local space. "There's a facility," he said, "built into an asteroid in an uninhabited system about 4 light-years from here. That's where the actual shield generator is located. The artifact is just the control mechanism. We need to take it there and integrate it with the main system." Seraphine was already moving, her fingers dancing across holographic controls as she transmitted commands to her bridge. Helm, prepare for immediate jump. Navigation, I'm sending coordinates now. Engineering, I need maximum power to the FTL drives. Responses came back in the Kithari language, which Marcus was startled to realize he could now partially understand. The artifact had done something to his brain, created neural pathways that allowed him to process information in new ways. He wasn't sure if he should be terrified or grateful. Your Majesty, Commander Vaxer's voice came through the communication system. Our sensors show multiple spatial distortions approaching. The patterns don't match any known FTL signatures. Recommend we withdraw to the fleet immediately. Negative, Commander, Seraphine replied. We're proceeding to new coordinates. The fleet is to form a defensive perimeter around this system and buy us time. Your Majesty, that's suicide for our forces, Vaxer protested. Whatever is approaching registers as dozens of massive contacts. We cannot hold against. The fleet will not be facing the enemy alone, Seraphine interrupted. I'm transmitting an emergency broadcast on all frequencies to every ship within range. Any vessel capable of forming defensive lines is to converge on this position. This is not a Kithari battle. This is a battle for survival itself. She cut the connection before Vaxer could argue further. The ship shuddered as its FTL drive spun up, reality bending around the hull in ways Marcus's enhanced perception could now sense. It felt like being inside a bubble of normal space while the universe outside shifted and compressed. We'll reach the facility in approximately 6 hours, Seraphine said. But Marcus, the silence will be here within 3. We're going to have to leave ships behind to slow its approach. They'll die, Marcus said quietly. Yes, Seraphine agreed, and her patterns flickered with something that looked like grief. Many will die so that we might have a chance to activate the shield. That is the burden of command, to make choices where all options carry unacceptable costs. Marcus understood then what it truly meant to be a queen. It wasn't the authority or the deference. It was being the one who had to decide which lives would be sacrificed so others might live. He saw the weight of that decision in every line of her posture, in the way her luminescence dimmed slightly as she transmitted orders that would send thousands to their deaths. There has to be another way, Marcus said. Some method to buy more time without. There isn't, Seraphine said flatly. Believe me, I have considered every alternative. The mathematics are inescapable. Either we delay the silence long enough to activate the shield, or every living being in this galaxy faces extinction. The ship lurched as it entered FTL, and Marcus grabbed a support rail to steady himself. Through the chamber's displays, he could see space warping around them, stars stretching into lines of light as they accelerated beyond the normal limits of physics. Then we need to make sure their sacrifice means something, Marcus said. When we reach that facility, I need you to trust me completely. The artifact has given me knowledge, but I'll need to improvise, to adapt the ancient systems to current circumstances. That's going to look strange and possibly dangerous. Seraphine met his eyes and Marcus saw absolute resolve there. I brought you here because I believed humanity possessed qualities my people have lost. I will not doubt that judgment now. Do whatever is necessary, Marcus Chin. I will ensure you have the time and resources you need. The ship's alarms intensified as new sensor data came through. Behind them, at the system they had just left, ships were arriving. Not just Kithari vessels but ships from dozens of species, responding to Seraphine's emergency broadcast. Some Marcus recognized from human databases. Others were completely unknown, their designs alien and exotic. And beyond them all, visible only on the most sensitive instruments, came the silence. It appeared on displays as regions of space where nothing existed, voids that grew larger with each passing moment. Where those voids touched matter, the matter simply ceased to be. No explosion, no energy release. Just nothing where something had been moments before. The fleet is engaging, Seraphine reported, her voice carefully neutral. Initial reports indicate our weapons have no effect. The enemy doesn't even register hits. It's as if we're firing into an absolute void. Marcus watched the tactical displays, seeing ships wink out of existence as they tried desperately to slow something that couldn't be fought with conventional means. Each disappearing icon represented hundreds or thousands of lives, beings from across the galaxy who had answered the call to stand against the oncoming darkness. How long until we reach the facility? Marcus asked. 4 hours, 37 minutes at current velocity, Seraphine replied. How long can the fleet hold? Seraphine's silence spoke volumes. When she finally answered, her voice was barely a whisper. 2 hours. Perhaps 3 if they're very brave and very lucky. Marcus felt the weight of all those lives pressing down on him. The fleet couldn't win, but they could buy time. Time for him to reach the facility and activate systems he barely understood, using knowledge implanted by beings who had died millennia ago trying to stop this same enemy. Tell them, Marcus said suddenly. Tell them what we're doing. Tell them that every minute they buy us is a minute closer to activating the shield. They deserve to know their sacrifice has purpose. Seraphine nodded slowly, then opened a fleet-wide channel. Her voice, when she spoke, carried across dozens of ships from a dozen species, translated by communication systems into languages Marcus couldn't begin to name. This is Queen Seraphine of the Kithari Empire. To all vessels holding the line against the silence, know this. We have discovered an ancient defense system, the weapon our predecessors used to survive this enemy's last incursion. We are en route to activate this shield, but we need time. Every moment you buy us brings us closer to protecting not just our peoples but all life in this galaxy. Your names will be remembered. Your courage will echo through the ages. Stand strong, brave defenders. Hold the line. The responses came back in a chorus of different voices and languages, but the meaning was universal. They would hold. For as long as they could, against impossible odds, they would stand between the silence and those racing to save them all. Marcus watched ships form defensive formations, watched them fire every weapon they possessed at an enemy that didn't even acknowledge their existence. He watched them disappear one by one, erased from reality as if they had never been. And he felt the weight of every lost life settle on his shoulders alongside Seraphine's burden. We can't fail, he said quietly. Too many people are dying to give us this chance. No, Seraphine agreed. We cannot. She reached out and placed her hand over his, a gesture of solidarity and shared purpose. Her skin was warm, the luminescent patterns pulsing in rhythm with what Marcus realized was her emotional state, determination mixed with fear and hope and resolve. Together, she said. Human ingenuity and Kithari resources. Perhaps that combination is what the universe has been waiting for. Marcus squeezed her hand briefly before releasing it. Then let's not keep the universe waiting any longer. I need to study the artifact specifications, learn everything I can before we reach the facility. We'll only get one chance at this. For the next 4 hours, Marcus worked with intensity he had never experienced before. The knowledge the artifact had implanted helped, but it was fragmentary, more like inherited instincts than conscious understanding. He had to piece together how ancient systems would interface with modern technology, how to bridge millennia of advancement and adaptation. Seraphine stood beside him throughout, offering insights from Kithari science, asking questions that forced Marcus to clarify his thinking. Despite their different backgrounds, they fell into an easy collaboration, each complementing the other's strengths. Behind them the fleet died. Ship by ship, crew by crew they held the line. Species that had been enemies weeks earlier fought side by side. Civilizations that had never spoken now communicated through desperate cooperation. The galaxy was uniting in the face of extinction, finding common purpose in shared survival. But it wasn't enough. The silence advanced inexorably, consuming everything in its path. 2 hours became 3. 3 became 4. The defenders had exceeded every expectation, every projection. They had given everything. And finally there were no more ships left to give. The last defensive line has fallen, Seraphine reported, her voice hollow. The silence is accelerating toward us. It will reach our position in 17 minutes. Marcus looked at the chronometer. They were still 12 minutes from the facility. Can we go faster? He asked desperately. We're already pushing the FTL drives beyond safety margins, Seraphine replied. Any more speed and we risk a catastrophic failure. Marcus did the math in his head. The enemy would catch them 5 minutes before they reached their destination. 5 minutes before they could activate the shield. After all those sacrifices, all those deaths, they were going to fail by 5 minutes. Unless... Seraphine, Marcus said slowly, an idea forming in his mind. The artifact responded to my neural patterns because they're more chaotic, more adaptable than Kithari patterns. What if that same principle applies to physics? I don't understand, Seraphine said. Your FTL drives follow precise calculations, exact routes through compressed space, Marcus explained, speaking faster as the idea crystallized. But what if we don't need precise? What if we use the chaos, embrace the uncertainty? Quantum physics tells us that observation affects outcome. What if I use my enhanced perception to observe a path that gets us there faster? That's completely theoretical, Seraphine protested. You're suggesting we navigate FTL based on human intuition rather than proven calculations? Yes, Marcus said simply. Because proven calculations are about to get us killed 5 minutes too late. Seraphine stared at him for a long moment. Behind her, the tactical display showed the silence closing in, an expanding region of nothingness that would consume them all. She made her decision. Navigation, slave helm control to the human engineer's neural interface, she commanded. Engineering, prepare to execute whatever course corrections he provides. The bridge crew's protests came through immediately, but Seraphine overrode them all with her royal authority. Within seconds, Marcus felt a strange tingling sensation as the ship's systems connected with his enhanced neural pathways. He could suddenly sense the fabric of space-time around them, feel the currents and eddies in the quantum foam. He stopped thinking and started feeling, letting his enhanced intuition guide him. He saw paths that the navigation computers would never calculate, routes that existed in probability rather than certainty. With thoughts instead of commands, he began steering the ship through space-time itself. Reality became fluid around them. The ship shuddered and groaned as it took impossible turns through folded dimensions. Alarms screamed across every system. But they were accelerating, moving faster than they had any right to move. Structural integrity at 60%, someone reported from the bridge. Hold together, Seraphine commanded. Just a little longer. Marcus felt like his brain was on fire, processing information at speeds that should have been impossible. He saw the silence behind them, saw it reaching out with tendrils of anti-existence. He saw the facility ahead, ancient and dormant and waiting. And he saw the path that would get them there with seconds to spare. The ship erupted from FTL in a burst of released energy that lit up the entire system. They materialized directly beside an asteroid that looked completely unremarkable except for the readings Marcus's enhanced senses could detect. Power signatures buried deep within, systems that had slept for millennia suddenly beginning to wake. We made it, Seraphine breathed. Now comes the hard part, Marcus replied, already moving toward the shuttle bay. Getting inside and activating the shield before the silence arrives. They ran through corridors together, Seraphine's guards falling in behind them. The ancient facility was so close now, its secrets waiting to be unlocked. Behind them, the silence was only minutes away. But Marcus Chin, human engineer and unlikely savior, had work to do. And this time, failure was not an option.